We're back. Sorry about the technical difficulties on Monday. Don't like not being able to actually come to you live here at 110sportsmedia.com/live and twitch.tv/110sports. Very happy to be back. Very, very happy, and I'm glad you're here with me on a Wednesday. We're halfway through the week. I want to get a couple things off my chest before we get into the agenda and the rest of the show. Saying get things off my chest probably makes it sound a lot more intense and tough than it is. There's just a couple things that I want to not forget to talk about. The first one is that this list that Devin Booker just joined is absolutely stupid. Stupid. Like, it really is. We're going to break it down for you real quick. Devin Booker hit a game winner against the Clippers last night. Finished with 35 points. It's the third time in his career that he's had 30 plus and hit a game-winning buzzer beater. There are three other players on that list: Larry Bird, Kobe Bryant, and Michael Jordan. Three of the best winners. The best winner in Michael Jordan in NBA history, and two other guys that are in the top 10, top 5, somewhere in there. And then you have Devin Booker, who is probably going to be a good stats, bad team guy for a lot of his career. Maybe you can get him to Minnesota, and him along with D'Lo and Karl-Anthony Towns can make something happen. But I still am not sure that Devin Booker is capable of being the best player on a championship team. We'll see if he ever gets that opportunity on a team that is actually good enough to win a championship. I mean, that's certainly, it's certainly up in the air. It's not that he's proven he can't. I'm just not sure that he's capable of that. And for him to be on that list with those three players, Bird, Kobe, and Michael Jordan, is laughable. And it's just one of those stats that makes very little. You have to do a double take. I mean, really? That guy? He's on that list too? But, Devin Booker is an elite scorer. He's just not exactly an all-time basketball player and hasn't exactly been, there's an argument he hasn't played a relevant basketball game since coming into the NBA because the Suns have just been so terrible for his entire career, which isn't exactly his fault, but it certainly is part of his career. It's just a funny stat. The other thing is that I got a COVID test yesterday, and just for precautionary reasons, as I go on a little trip here, and I don't want to get anybody else sick where I'm going, but it feels weird. When you get hit in the face with the basketball, you sort of it catches your nose. You know what I'm talking about? And you get that tingling sensation, that burning sensation from your forehead to the tip of your nose. It's exactly what it feels like. And the other part is just what is this thing that's farther up my nose than anything I've ever felt before? Going that far up my nose, it was quite the sensation because it didn't really hurt, but it was quite the sensation. But let me set the agenda for us today at 11:20 or so. We're going to break down the winners and losers of the college basketball after the August 3rd, 2020 NBA draft deadline came and went. Now, it's actually weird. The deadline for the NBA on that side of things is actually the 17th of August, I believe. But college basketball's deadline was the 3rd. So in theory, anybody who said they're coming back to school could, in theory, go back into the draft before August 17th. But that's probably not going to happen. So there were a lot of winners. There weren't very many losers, but we'll break those down here in about 20 minutes or so. After that, we're going to talk PGA Championship, the first major of the year. It's really sad that it's August 5th, and we're just now talking about the first major of the year. That really sucks. It's been over a year since there was a major championship. Tomorrow starts the PGA Championship in San Francisco at TPC Harding Park. We'll talk about my picks, some of the storylines going into that, and then we'll wrap up with FYI at the end of the show. It should be a good one. We're going to bounce around quite a bit, and I very much enjoy bouncing around when we get a chance to do that. But what I'm going to start with is the biggest news of the morning, and that is the release of the Big Ten football schedule. For the time being, plans will continue to push forward to play college football. There's supposed to be an announcement from the AAC later today about their schedule. So this is happening. I mean, we're talking about the first weekend here is, every team in the Big Ten playing between September 3rd and 5th. I mean, it's August 5th. We're a month away. And it's time for these schedules to actually come out and to actually be on paper if we're actually going to continue to push forward with this. Of course, there are still questions, whether or not this will actually happen is certainly still up in the air. But as of right now, they're pushing forward, and they have an intent of actually continuing on and playing a college football season. So let me run through the highlights, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. Every team playing 10 games in 12 weeks, which means there's a lot of flexibility here. 10 games in 12 weeks. Week 13 is a bye week. So you've got two other weeks, and then you've got a bye week in week 13 where nobody is scheduled to play. Basically, there's a lot of flexibility here. You're trying to get 10 games in you've got some space to do it. There's a lot of flexibility here. It's a built-in bye weeks in week 13. So if a game gets postponed, there's a makeup week in week 13, and that's on November 28th. That's huge. The flexibility here is huge if you actually want to. I mean, because of course there's a possibility. I would even say there's a really good possibility that there are some of these games that are postponed, whether it be for COVID-19 related issues, maybe whether it's an outbreak on the campus of that school or an outbreak just in the middle of, or if it's just an outbreak on the football team. I find it hard to believe that they'll actually get all the way through this without some sort of postponement. But clearly they're preparing for that, however that might look. With these 10 games in 12 weeks, they're not trying to cram more in than necessary, and they're really making sure that there's room to make these games up, which is something that baseball in particular didn't do. Baseball in particular didn't do that. 60 games in 66 days. There's not a whole lot of space to make up these games when the Cardinals are missing a full week, the Marlins are missing a full week, so on and so forth. So that's the flexibility is huge there. Week 1 games, every team is playing sometime between September 3rd and 5th. There will be Thursday and Friday games on that first week, the 5th being the Saturday. Weeks 1 and 12 are cross-division weeks for all schools. This Friday, August 7th, is the beginning of preseason practices, according to the Big Ten release that came out this morning. Ohio State and Michigan play on October 24th. I'll get to that in a couple minutes. But Michigan and Ohio State play on October 24th. The Big Ten Championship, as of right now, scheduled to be played when it usually is, and that's the first Saturday in December at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. That's December 5th this year, December 5th, 2020. Players can opt out and still keep scholarships. This is a really big deal. This is I mean, it wasn't expected that wouldn't be the case, but having this be the case, I think, is a really big deal and a really good thing for the Big Ten, and a really good thing for the athletes, that they don't feel the pressure to have to pay, some of these athletes who need. I mean, at this point, everybody needs the scholarships to a certain extent, but there are certainly athletes who need the scholarship to continue to go to school. And the fact that they're absolutely going to get that regardless of if they play or not, regardless of if they feel safe playing or not, or they just want to, exercise the virtual learning possibility that most schools are providing, that's giving them the ability and the space to do that, I think is really crucial for the Big Ten here, really crucial for what they're doing in college athletics in general, and certainly in football, such a high contact sport. Big Ten football athletes are being required to be tested twice a week. for COVID-19. The Big Ten doing it based on the contact level of the sport. So the NCAA minimum right now is once a week. Big Ten football players and other high contact sports are twice a week, and some of those lower contact sports are once a week. But the Big Ten in particular, certainly not only is it one of those conferences that have schools with enough money that they can test more frequently than is required, they can also do things like partner with research labs and partner with medical labs to get tests back as fast as possible so that they're as up to date with that as they possibly can be. And that's the rundown. We can talk about the schedule if you guys would like to right now. Let me pull it up on Twitter real quick. It's an interesting schedule, and that's the first thing I want to talk about here from the perspective of what this schedule actually looks like, because I can see there's so many people who are so upset that these games aren't happening when they're quote unquote supposed to. The number of people who are crying and screaming and complaining about the fact that Ohio State and Michigan State Ohio State and Michigan isn't typically when it's supposed to be, is just like, get over it. Get over yourself, please. These are the same people who are crying and all pathetic about the fact that how could they take our college football season away from us? This is a tyranny. They're just trying to control us. Listen, the earlier a game is, the more chance there is that it gets played. The more chance there is that it gets played. Every team's got 2 bye weeks. Michigan and Ohio State are supposed to play in Week 8, October 24th. Both Michigan and Ohio State have 2 bye weeks. You have the bye that they both have a bye week in. Both schools have a bye week in Week 11, November 14th, so you can play it then if something happens and the October 24th game needs to be postponed. And then you have the November 28th open week, Week 13, which gives you another chance to play that game if it needs to be postponed. If you play it when you would usually play it at the the Saturday after Thanksgiving, if you would play it when you usually played it, you have no other chance. One chance. I'm not exactly sure when Thanksgiving is this year. I can check that for you, though. But the point being is that if you don't get it right, Thursday, November 26th, that would be Week 13. All it takes at that point is for an outbreak, and then you don't even get the game. So this is where we need to chill, first of all. You need to get over yourself. And just be thankful that the game is actually happening. And there are 2 other chances in which Michigan and Ohio State, they line up perfectly their schedules when it comes to bye weeks. They don't have the same bye week prior. Of course. They don't have the same bye week prior to that game. But they have 2 weeks when they don't have games scheduled following that. So you have 2 other chances to play that game. So get over it. It's so impossible to please people. It's crazy. You got your football season. Will you stop finding other reasons to complain? Please. It's getting exhausting. It makes sense. Yeah, I'll preface what I'm going to say next with the fact that I really hope there's college football this fall. I really hope there's NFL football this fall. I really do. I'm in the camp of really wanting those things to happen. But with that being said, Kevin Warren, the commissioner of the Big Ten, you can't be quoted saying this is not about the money. Like there's a certain, there's you at least got to play the game a little bit. Even if you don't answer it with, yeah, these, this football season will really help out our athletic programs, and it puts them in a tough spot if we don't have the season. Maybe if you really don't want to say that, because then people can quote, it's about the money, not about the player's safety. But you certainly don't. You don't have to say, this is about health and safety first. Because if it was about health and safety first, you wouldn't be thinking about a football season. Wouldn't be thinking about a football season. It's just true. It's just true. With that being said, I'm excited about this news. I am. The Big Ten, of course, has pull in the college football world. Clearly, this has been, these discussions have been happening all over the place. And listen, it's August 5th. You've seen outbreaks around Big Ten campuses, Big Ten football programs around the country. If you're in the camp of, I just want college football, regardless of what needs to happen, what risk, and there are a lot of people in there. And the point being is that there are so many cases in this country. There are cases around football programs, and this is continuing to move forward. Something is going to have to happen, and there will be an outbreak on a college campus, and 50% of the college campus will get COVID-19. I'm almost positive about that. It might not be the Big Ten, but somewhere in this country, colleges will open up, people will move back into dorms, and it'll result in a really big, widespread outbreak. It just will. It's going to happen. It'll be... So prepare yourself for that. So maybe that is the kind of thing that shuts this down. But in terms of, there's a lot that's happened already that you thought might could shut it down, and it hasn't yet. That would be the only thing I'd say. If you're looking for something to hang your hat on, it's that. It's that there's been some pretty tough things happening already, and it hasn't resulted in a cancellation of college football yet. So we'll see. We're getting dangerously close to beginning of football season on both the professional and college side, and it's continuing to move forward as though it's going to happen. So hang your hat on that if you need to hang your hat on anything. And wear your mask so that once we actually get to it, things have improved, because that's a month away. There's a study that said it would take 42 days if everyone wore their mask to completely control coronavirus in this country. 42 days. We're still 30 days away from college football starting. Everyone wear their mask, the cases will go down, and we can feel better about college football and the NFL coming back. Coming up next, we'll talk about the winners and losers from college basketball in the NBA 2020 draft deadline. That was on August 3rd. We've got a lot of winners, not a lot of losers, but we'll talk about both. That's coming up next on the Jmull Show on 110sportsmedia.com. Welcome back to the Jmull Show on a Wednesday. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. 110sportsmedia.com/live, twitch.tv/110sports. College football is coming back, and if you're a bigger college basketball fan than you are a college football fan, you should be a big college football fan this fall, because how the success of college football directly impacts what this season could look like for college basketball. Right? So if you want to have a college basketball season, even if you don't much care for college football, I mean, I will admit, from an analytical perspective, I don't much care for college football. I enjoy watching it, but mostly the big games. I'm not going to watch everything. But I care a lot about college basketball. And I really want to see the college basketball season happen, especially after this deadline has come and gone, because there are a lot of great players coming back. A lot of great players have withdrawn from the NBA draft, and there's going to be a great college basketball season if we can have it. So let's root for college football to work, because if it works and coming back to schools work, then the destiny of the college basketball season is much, much better. Much, much better. But over at 110sportsmedia.com today, it's up on the website now if you'd like to see a written version of what we're about to talk about. I detail college basketball's winners and losers of the 2020 NBA draft deadline, which was August 3rd. So you had a lot of guys either cementing themselves in the draft or coming back to school. So you get some winners and losers on both sides of the equation. We're going to talk about that. We'll break it down right now. There are a lot of winners, and the biggest winner is college basketball. There's a lot of talk, the G League program, Dacian Nix, Jalen Green, Isaiah Todd. You had guys go to the G League program, and that's fine. It's hard to pass that up. You work out in LA, you do nothing but work out in LA for a year, make $500,000 doing it, and then you're ready for the NBA draft. That's attractive. I will not lie. But at the same time, there's a lot of attractive things about college basketball. No matter what you do, there's nothing you could do that gets you more publicity than playing for a high-level Division I college basketball team. Because those G League games aren't going to be on TV. Those practices, you'll get some scouts looking at you. It's a really nice place for the scouts to be able to come and look at you under a program that is basically owned by the NBA. So there's that attraction. But in terms of playing in high-pressure games, getting people to see you on TV every night, there's no better place to do it than Division I college basketball at the highest level. That's indisputable. Filip Petrusev, Gonzaga's senior leader, 2019-20 WCC Player of the Year, and likely first-team All-American this season, decided to go play in Serbia. That's cool. David Moretti, Texas Tech's point guard, forewent his senior season at Texas Tech with the Red Raiders to go and play in Italy. Also cool. But you had a lot of guys come back. So the first winner is college basketball, because you're going to have you've got the top prospect in the sport in Cade Cunningham. He's going to play at Oklahoma State, despite the fact that Oklahoma State has postseason bans. That's big for the sport. He could be the best player in college basketball. And then you have the guy who's the favorite to be the best player in college basketball coming back. You got teams that are now definitely, either one of the best teams in the sport, or certainly a team that has enough talent to get to the Final Four to be a top 10 team in the country as a result of their players coming back. So let's break it down. Winners, losers. We'll start with the winners. The first winner is the Iowa Hawkeyes. Luka Garza will probably be, Cade Cunningham's going to have to do a lot to be the best player in college basketball, because Luka Garza was the best player in college basketball, one of the two up there with Obi Toppin last year. 23 points, 8.9 rebounds a game, and he's coming back to Iowa. That immediately turns Iowa into a Big Ten title contender. Regular season would be the first one since 1979, which is crazy that it's been that long since the Hawkeyes have actually won a Big Ten title. They shared the regular season title that year with Michigan State and Purdue, I believe. But it's been a long time since Iowa was at the very top of the Big Ten. Luka Garza coming back puts them in a really good position to do that. He probably wasn't going to stay in the draft. It wasn't guaranteed at all that he was going to be picked in the draft. He reportedly could have made some good money overseas for a guy coming straight out of college. But Garza is coming back to Iowa, and immediately the Big Ten is better, and Iowa has a chance to be one of the best teams in the Big Ten. Illinois is right on their heels in terms of teams that were the biggest winners and really are, along with Iowa, the reason that the Big Ten is also a really big winner here. Io DeSumo and Cockburn both coming back. Both coming back to Illinois. That's 30 points worth of production between the two of them. DeSumo has a chance to be the second best player in the Big Ten next year. And now they have one of the best 1-2 punches in college basketball. There are teams that have a better best player, Cade Cunningham, Luka Garza, but in terms of two guys that together are one of the best 1-2 punches in college basketball, those two guys are it. 16.6 points, 3.3 assists, 4.3 rebounds from DeSumo, coming back for year 3. Now they're a top 10 caliber team, and a team that you really have to think about and really have to take seriously when talking about the top of the Big Ten and talking about teams that have a real chance to win a national championship, get to a Final Four, make a lot of noise in the NCAA tournament. It's a similar team to what they had last year. I didn't have a whole lot of faith in them last year. They proved me wrong. I'm very well aware of that, and they're going to be even better this year. The Big Ten is a winner, and Iowa and Illinois are at the very front of that. The Baylor Bears. Now, Illinois and Iowa cemented their spots at the top of the Big Ten with their players coming back. Baylor cemented their spot as one of the best teams in college basketball as a result of who they have coming back. Jared Butler and MaCio Teague both coming back. Jared Butler probably going to be a preseason first-team All-American, at least up there. He's going to be one of the best players in the sport next season. MaCio Teague, you still got Davion Mitchell. They've got their trio of guards that are elite on both ends of the floor coming back for next season, and so they're going to be at the top. They're the team to beat in the Big 12. And there's an argument that they're, once again, the team to beat in college basketball. They had one of, if not the best year in program history, even without an NCAA tournament last year. And Scott Drew has a lot of guys coming back. And that center of that team, and MaCio Teague and Jared Butler coming back, they're going to be terrifying. They're going to be a big part of next year's NCAA tournament if there ends up being one. Will Wade at LSU, Javonte Smart, Trendon Watford both coming back. 26 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists worth of production coming back to Baton Rouge. They weren't the only winner here. We'll get to my other winner from the SEC here in just a second, but LSU got two guys back. They lose Skylar Mays, their leading scorer, but they return their next 4 leading scorers as a result of Javonte Smart and Trendon Watford coming back. They're going to be a team, a force to be reckoned with. We'll get to Arkansas here in a second, but Kentucky once again at the top of the 2020 recruiting rankings. With the guys that they have in their recruiting class, they're going to be just like they are every year. Arkansas is going to be good. Alabama is going to be good. But LSU is absolutely going to be a part of that with what they have coming back. Arkansas, they're going to lose. They lost Mason Jones, their leading scorer. He signed with an agent back in the spring, and of course will not be returning to campus for Eric Musselman. But you did get Isaiah Joe back, who was easily the second best scorer on that team and has a chance to be one of the better offensive players in the SEC next year. 16.9 points, 4.1 rebounds, 1.7 assists. and without Mason Jones there, he's gonna get a lot of those shots that Mason Jones had. I'd be willing to bet that Isaiah Joe averages over 20 points per game this season. That's really big for Arkansas. And then, why they're a winner even more is partly because of what they also have coming in. They have a top 10 recruiting class with four stars for Musselman coming in this season, as well as a trio of transfers: Justin Smith from Indiana, Vance Jackson from New Mexico, and Northern Kentucky's Jalen Tate. All three guys averaging 10-plus points last season for their respective schools, all immediately eligible. And with a coach like Musselman at the helm, Arkansas is going to be ready to return the NCAA tournament next year. And getting the news of Isaiah Joe, I mean, of course, taking a hit with Mason Jones, but he averaged 22 points last season. He wasn't going to come back. But Isaiah Joe he's going to lead this team, and with the pieces that they also have between that recruiting class and grad transfers, you got a lot to be excited about if you're a Razorbacks fan. There weren't many losers, but there are two that I outlined over at 110sportsmedia.com. The first being Michigan State. It didn't seem likely that Xavier Tillman was going to stick around. Tillman 6'8", with a wingspan of 7'1", can guard a lot of positions. He's also got a family, 2 children, I believe, at this point. So it wasn't likely that he was going to return for his senior season. But when you lose, so that wasn't unexpected, but you lost Cassius Winston and now Xavier Tillman. Those are your 2 top scorers, your veteran leaders. Tillman was going to be the only senior on the team that plays any real minutes. I think there was an end of the bench guy who was also a junior last year, so he'll be there for his senior season. But in terms of guys who make a big impact night in and night out on the floor, Xavier Tillman was the oldest guy and was going to be the only senior. The recruiting class is fine. They got some nice 4 stars coming in around they're 2 top 75 players in the class, but it's not a class to write home about. Mady Sissoko and AJ Hugard are the 2 recruits. Sissoko is a rim protector, so that really helps with the absence of Xavier Tillman. Hogger has a good body as well. Good shooter, especially off the dribble. Nice contributor, a distributor, but we'll see how much either of them play. It might be more with Xavier Tillman staying in the draft. He's going to be a top 25 pick, and it makes sense that he went, but they're undoubtedly a loser in this scenario. And then the other one is the Stanford Cardinals. Tyrell Terry became one of the more exciting players to watch in college basketball last season, and unfortunately he's not going to be there for Jared Haas and the Cardinal. He's the second leading scorer behind Oscar da Silva. And he had a Trae Young type excitement, swagger, game to him. And, he certainly didn't have the season that Trae Young did, and he won't be drafted as high as Trae Young was. But he's one of those guys that has a lot of upside. He's really exciting. And look at Trae Young. Trae Young has turned into a really, really good point guard in the NBA. Not turned into. He's come and he's made an immediate impact. And Trae Young translating to the NBA the way that he has makes Tyrell Terry even more attractive. He would have been really great next season at Stanford, and they probably would have gone back to the tournament for just the second time since 2008 if he had returned, especially in a Pac-12 that is interesting to say the least, is not the most exciting in terms of talent. UCLA will be good. Once again, they had some players come back. They're certainly a winner here as well. But Arizona is going to be weird. And you've just got, UCLA is not going to be as good as they could have been because Daishen Nix chose to go to the G League program after committing to UCLA. But the Cardinal had a chance to be one of the more interesting teams in college basketball this upcoming season, in my opinion. And now it's just, you're just kind of in a spot where you're not super excited about it anymore. They were hovering around 500 for most of the back half of the 2010s. Last year they were 20-12, and they were going to be better this season, the next season with Tyrell Terry, but he's got, he gained a lot of traction, and even as the 109th player at 247 Sports in 2019, a guy that you'd think as a head coach that you'd never have to say goodbye to after 1 year. That's ultimately what happened, and unfortunately for the Cardinal, Terry is on to the next chapter and staying in the NBA draft. Not a lot of losers, certainly some, but a lot of winners here. There are a lot of really good college basketball players coming back, and for a sport that a lot of people are worried about in terms of, players deciding to go elsewhere, players deciding that they don't want to play college basketball. You have this G League program, you have overseas, but here's the thing. You got a lot of players coming back. I mean, that list of players is elite that I just laid out to you, and the guys that are coming back. Okay, they're not all elite, but a lot of them are. You've got last year's one of the two best players in the sport from last year coming back in Luka Garza. You've got the best player in the class of 2020, Cade Cunningham, coming to college, even though he's not going to play in an NCAA tournament game. College basketball is going to be fine. They're going to be fine, and it's going to be a great season if it happens. And that was cemented even more with the results of the decisions that were made at the trade deadline. Not at the trade deadline, sorry, the draft deadline here on August 3rd. I'm very excited for college basketball. I hope I'm much more attached to that than I am to college football. Even if it's just a conference schedule that starts, January 1, I'll take it. I really just want an NCAA tournament. It's easily the thing that I miss the most. Out of this pandemic is not having the NCAA tournament, not having a Final Four, and not getting to crown a national champion. Coming up next on the Jmull Show, we'll talk my PGA Championship picks. We'll talk some storylines. We'll talk Beefy Bryson. We'll talk Brooks Koepka, and everybody in between. We'll do that next on the Jmull Show on 110sportsmedia.com. Welcome back to the Jmull Show on a Wednesday. It's not a Monday, it's a Wednesday. Thanks so much for joining us, making us a part of your day at 110sportsmedia.com. Lots of great written content over there. Baseball continues on. Chris Brown at Brown Sports on Twitter. Just chugging along. Great coverage over there from him. NBA, NFL draft regrades. My story about what we just talked about in the last segment. Lots going on. Lots going on over at 110sportsmedia.com. If you haven't gotten a chance to, please check out what we got going on over there. You know, what I want to talk about now is something I've been waiting weeks, months, a year for. We got major championship golf. And you know, there are a lot of you who don't care. That's fine. I care. I'm excited. And now, you know, of course you'd like to have the Masters in April, the PGA in May, the US Open in June, and then the British Open in July. You'd love to have it like that. Let's get that clear. We'd love to just have it like that. But as a result of this pandemic, now you have major championship golf when you've never had major championship golf. You had a PGA in August. I mean, for a long time the PGA was in August, but you've got the PGA in August. The US Open a few weeks later. There's no British Open this year, but then you've got the Masters in November. I'm really excited for that, just to see how different the place plays, how different it looks on TV. But we got to start with the PGA Championship. This week, TPC Harding Park in San Francisco. It's the first time there's been a stroke play event on the PGA Tour since 2005, an event that Tiger Woods, El Tigre, actually won. Since then, there's been the WGC match play, which Rory McIlroy won, I believe in 2015 was when that tournament was. You had a President's Cup, I believe, is what it was since then at TPC Harding Park as well. But it's been a long time since there's been a stroke play event. And, you know, honestly, and this is the biggest, it doesn't strike you as a major championship course. It's not quite as difficult. The slope rating isn't quite as high. But they're doing some things to make it much more difficult. You make the greens run. It's right on the water out in San Francisco, so you're going to get a lot of wind, especially on the back nine coming down the home stretch of holes. They've tightened the fairways a little bit, made the greens lightning quick, grown the rough 3.5, 4 inches. And so you're going to have a difficult golf course. It's a big boy golf course, lots of long par fours. It's going to be really tough for anybody who doesn't hit it a really long way to contend in this tournament, which is why, and you're also going to have to hit the golf ball straight, which is why, getting into my picks here, actually we'll talk storylines real quick. You know, we talked about first stroke play event since 2005. Brooks Koepka going for history here, trying to win his third straight PGA championship. He won, you know, the PGA in St. Louis at Bellerive 2 years ago, and then won the PGA at Bethpage Black back in May of 2019, going for 3 in a row here. And he played pretty well over in Memphis last week, here in Memphis last week. But he's had some knee injuries. His right knee has been bothersome for a lot of 2020. He's actually outside of he's not even close to sniffing the first playoff event, I believe, at this point. So he's got some work to do. He played well there in Memphis, and it's a major championship. You can't count Brooks out of a major championship anywhere, no matter how he's playing, because we know all about Brooks in major championships. So you know he's going to be up there. He's going to be in the top 10. I'm pretty confident in that, and we'll see if he's actually in contention come. So he was 155th, but after his performance at the WGC FedEx St. Jude Invitational, he played well. He had a chance to win on Sunday. Justin Thomas ultimately getting that, but he was 155th prior to that tournament. Now he's 96th comfortably, and I don't see him actually bouncing out at this point. He would have to do something quite impressive to to get out of it. So I think we'll be fine there. We'll see Brooks in the playoffs, but 3 in a row. You've also got Jordan Spieth, who, it hasn't been the best of last couple years for Jordan Spieth. But what has happened, but what he has a chance to do is complete the Grand Slam here. He's got a Masters. He's got a U.S. Open. He's got a British Open. Now it's time to get the PGA, which in a lot of ways is the easiest one to win. I'm not sure he's the guy at this course. Spieth is not a great driver of the golf ball in terms of accuracy. He's a great iron player. If he can keep it in the short stuff, he certainly has a chance to win. And that putter keeps him in. It can keep him in tournaments every week if he's rolling it well. I'm not sure he's the favorite. He's definitely not the favorite. I wouldn't bet on him to win, but it is a storyline. Every time he plays in the PGA, every time he tees it up, he's got a chance to complete complete something that not even Phil Mickelson has completed. Phil is one of the 6 or 7 best players in the history of the game. Jordan's got a chance to do it, and he's not that old. Late 20s. He's already got a chance to do it. But with that being said, my pick, my winner, is beefy Bryson himself, Bryson DeChambeau. It's a big boy golf course. You're gonna have to hit it far, and Bryson hits it really straight. It's the most impressive thing he's doing with the distance. The distance is impressive, but the fact that he's hitting it so straight is even more impressive. He's first in strokes gained off the tee, was top 2 in strokes gained putting last week in Memphis. He hasn't won a major yet. He has, the rough, his decision making. There are some things that make me a little hesitant, but I don't think JT is going to win this event. He's not a super accurate driver of the golf ball. He makes a lot of birdies, really great in par 4 scoring, but Bryson DeChambeau is even better in par 4 scoring, which I think will be a really big deal, especially down the stretch in this event. 5 par 4s in the last 6 holes. No par 5s. The last par 5 you'll see is the 12th hole out at TPC Harding Park. There's a lot of big par 4s. He's way up there in par 4 scoring. First on the PGA Tour right now. Second, maybe. I think in relation to par, he is first in terms of par 4 scoring. I believe he's second behind Webb Simpson, if I'm remembering that correctly. But DeChambeau is going to be in contention. In my opinion, it's going to happen. I think he'll have a chance to win on Sunday. And if he's putting well, with how far he hits it, how strong he is with this rough, I think he's got a really, really good chance to win. My sleeper pick is Victor Hovland. Oklahoma State youngster, already won on the tour. He's been really good in majors. He was really good at Pebble Beach, the place that he actually won the US Am. He was low am at the Masters. This is, good player, has won some tournaments, makes a lot of birdies, and he hits it long and straight. And, he's a really horrible chipper of the golf ball. But with all the rough around the greens here, there's going to be a lot of chipping out of the rough, which in a lot of ways is actually easier for a bad chipper than trying to chip off a lot of tight lies, I think he's got a chance to be a sleeper pick here. Certainly wouldn't pick him to win, but I think he's a sleeper here. And my top 10 is Webb Simpson. He's already won once this, along with Brooks Koepka. Webb Simpson won on the restart, already has another top 10. He's top 10 in strokes gained approach, so he's a great iron player. Top 20 in driving accuracy, so he's going to keep it in the fairway a lot. At times in the past couple of years, past year and a half or so, Webb Simpson has played like one of the best players in the world. He's so consistent. I think he's going to have a really good chance to be up there in the top 10, even if he doesn't actually win this event. So those are my picks. PGA Championship Harding Park, TPC Harding Park, specifically out there in San Francisco. It's major championship golf. I'm so excited. Today's August 5th. It starts tomorrow, August 6th, and I can't wait for major championship golf to be back in my life for several times in the next several months. But coming up next, we'll do FYI and get out of here. You're watching the Jmull Show on 110sportsmedia.com. Welcome back to the Jmull Show on a Wednesday. Wrapping up the show here with some FYI. We got a couple good ones. UConn. FYI, for your information, UConn football becoming one of the first major football programs in the country to officially cancel its college football season. I'm sure this is not going to be the only one. UConn doesn't make a whole lot of money off of their football programs. I know the Ivy League has done this as well, but UConn officially canceling their football season for the fall. I want to run through the NBA standings real quick. We didn't talk a whole lot of NBA today. We talked a little Devin Booker at the beginning of the show, but I want to run through the standings real quick. Milwaukee is still comfortably in first, 5 games ahead of Toronto. Toronto in second, followed by Boston, Miami, Indiana, and Philly. And then Brooklyn and Orlando at the bottom right now. Brooklyn and Orlando actually maintain, it's still a half-game lead for Brooklyn right now, which is surprising, in my opinion. Boston a game and a half ahead of Miami. They're now 4.5 behind the Raptors. So that's out of the equation. Boston really just fighting for that 3 seed now, making sure they maintain that. The Pacers beating the Sixers and now have a game and a half lead over the 76ers. Miami right there, only a game ahead of Indiana now, only a game and a half, while also only being a game and a half behind Boston. So that's the story. That today, if there's a couple things that can happen that officially eliminate Washington from any sort of contention here, but they're in the 9 seed and they're 7.5 games back of the 8th seed. There's not going to be a playing game in the East. In the West, LA, the Lakers 6.5 games ahead of the Clippers now. They're going to be the 1 seed. The Clippers 6.5 games back in second, only a game ahead of Denver, who's in third, followed by Houston, who's 2 games behind Denver. They're now in fourth. They've had a really good start to the restart, and they're now tied for fourth with the Jazz. Oklahoma City is in sixth behind those 2 teams, just half a game back. Dallas 2 games back of Oklahoma City at this point. And Memphis now 8 games back of that 7 spot. That was never in question in any way. But what is interesting now is Jaren Jackson Jr. It was announced Torres is left the meniscus in his left knee, I believe, yesterday. Or 2 days ago, it was announced yesterday. So he's out for the rest of the season. Portland has looked really solid. They lose to Boston, but they almost found a way to win that game. They're only a game and a half back now. We're to the point now that there's absolutely going to be a play-in game. I mean, I guess there's a scenario in which it doesn't happen, but it's a highly unlikely scenario. The Grizzlies only a game and a half up now. Lots of pressure on them to hold on to that 8 seed. And so that they still have to lose 2 games in the play-in to actually not get that 8 seed. But right now, Portland's looking like the team to beat. San Antonio is still just 2 games back of Memphis. They've had a really solid start. New Orleans 2.5 games back. So all of those teams have gained ground except for Sacramento. Sacramento is still 3.5 games back as expected. The Kings are now, not the Kings, the Suns now actually only 2.5 games back, 3 games back, of the Grizzlies. So there's a lot going on right there. There's a lot of scenarios that could happen. I mean, the Suns are only a game and a half back of Portland, who's currently the 9 seed. There's a lot of scenarios left here, a lot of interesting things that could happen with that 8 seed. And when Memphis is not anywhere near full strength now without Justice Winslow and now Jaren Jackson Jr., that's a very intriguing race to keep an eye on as we get closer and closer to the end of seeding games and that play-in tournament, that play-in series. And then finally, per usual, tomorrow, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern, you'll get Touchline Talk with Josh Doring, and 1 p.m. Eastern, you'll get Around the Bases with Chris Brown on 110 Sports Network. If you haven't checked out the written content over on the site today at 110sportsmedia.com, please do. We've got podcasts all over the place. The Bonfire, most recent episode with ESPN's Dana Lee is a really good one. Conversation about a lot of things. If you haven't checked that one out, I think you should. You can find both that podcast and the Bonfire. That's the Bonfire. You can find Jays for Days, both of those on either Apple Podcasts or Google Play. Appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me on Wednesday. Like I said, Touchline Talk and Around the Bases will be live tomorrow. I'll be back, same place, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern on Friday. Take care, and I'll see you then.